The queen's despair. The palace of the alien queen was filled with silence. But it was not the silence of peace, it was the silence of fear. The air was heavy, the halls dark, and the throne room echoed with the queen's broken cry. Her daughters, the pride of her empire, the future of her people, had been stolen in the night. She sat on her throne, her golden crown shining under the dim light, but her eyes were filled with tears. The alien queen was powerful. Her voice could command armies, her will could bend empires. Yet in that moment she was only a mother who had lost her children. Her cry shook the walls and the courtiers bowed their heads, none daring to speak. The story of the kidnapping spread quickly across the empire. The queen's daughters were young and innocent, taken by a rival force who wished to break her spirit. No army was sent to chase them. No commander stepped forward. The enemy was too strong, their ships too many, and their fortress hidden beyond hostile stars. Fear held every soldier. Fear chained every general. The queen rose from her throne, her tall figure trembling with rage. Her voice cut through the chamber, sharp like lightning. "Who among you will bring back my daughters?" she demanded. "Who among you will defy the enemy and return them to me?" Her words echoed in the hall, but no one answered. Not one warrior raised his hand. Not one captain bowed to accept the task. The queen's despair grew deeper. Her advisors whispered of hopeless plans. Some said they should beg the enemy. Some said they should give ransom. Others said they should prepare for war that would doom their people. The queen listened, but her heart was breaking. She wanted her daughters, not excuses, not cowardice, not silence as the court remained still. A sound broke the silence. The heavy doors of the throne room creaked open, and a figure stepped inside. It was not a mighty alien general, not a decorated commander. It was a human dressed in simple armor, his steps steady, his gaze unshaken. The courtiers gasped, some laughed, some sneered. A human, small and fragile compared to the alien soldiers. How could such a being dare step into the queen's court at such a time? Yet the human walked forward, unafraid. He bowed before the queen. His voice was calm but strong. "Your Majesty, I will bring back your daughters," he said. The court erupted with laughter. "A human," one alien hissed. "He will not last a day in enemy space," another mocked. "Send him, and we will be rid of his foolishness." But the human's eyes did not move. His promise was not shaken. The queen stared at him. Her tears slowed, and for a moment, she forgot her despair. She saw something in his eyes, something she had not seen in the eyes of her warriors. It was not arrogance, not greed, not fear. It was courage, pure and simple. Her advisors tried to stop her. They begged her not to trust the human. They warned her of failure, of shame. But the queen lifted her hand and silenced them. She stepped down from her throne, her long cloak flowing behind her. She looked into the human's eyes and spoke. "If you dare, then I will grant you my blessing." She reached for her crown and removed a small jewel from its side. She placed it in his hand. "This is the royal insignia," she said. "It will mark you as one who carries my authority. With it, doors will open and paths will clear, but it will also paint a target on your back. My enemies will hunt you with greater fury. Do you still accept this task?" The human closed his hand over the jewel. His voice did not tremble. "Yes," he answered. The queen felt a spark of hope, faint but real. She turned to her court and declared, "This human shall go where none of you dared. He will bring back my daughters or die trying, and if he falls, his name will be remembered when yours are forgotten." The court was silent. No one dared laugh now. The queen's despair was not gone, but it had shifted. Now there was a small flame in her heart. A hope that maybe, just maybe, the human would succeed. As the human left the throne room, whispers followed him. Some said he was a fool. Others said he was already dead. But deep in the queen's heart, she prayed to the stars, to the old gods, to anything that would listen. She prayed that the human was not just brave, but chosen that night. As she sat alone in her chamber, the queen looked out at the endless stars. Somewhere out there, her daughters cried for her. Somewhere out there, her enemy mocked her. But somewhere out there, a human had begun his journey. And for the first time since the abduction, the queen allowed herself a single thought. Perhaps her despair would one day turn into triumph. The human's vow. The human walked out of the throne room with the queen's jewel in his hand. The courtiers still whispered behind him, their voices dripping with doubt and scorn. Yet none dared stop him. The queen had given him her blessing. and with it came the weight of authority. Outside, the palace walls glowed under the alien moonlight. The human paused for a moment and stared at the jewel. It shimmered faintly, not just as a symbol of the queen's power, but as a reminder of his promise he had told her he would return her daughters. And he would not break that vow in the great courtyard. Soldiers trained with heavy weapons. Their armor shone, their bodies were strong. But none of them had stepped forward to answer the queen's call. When the human passed, some turned their heads in shame, others in anger. One alien warrior spat near his feet. "You will fail," he growled, "and your failure will bring more shame to her throne." The human said nothing. He tightened his grip on the jewel and kept walking. He had no time for pride, no time for anger. His vow was more important than their insults. That night he entered the palace library, vast and filled with ancient scrolls and glowing tablets. He studied the maps of enemy space, the guarded routes, the known fortresses. His mind absorbed every detail. He did not have the strength of an army, but he had something more valuable: clarity and focus. As the hours passed, an old alien scholar approached him. The scholar's eyes were tired, but curious. "Why do you risk your life, human?" he asked softly. "Why do you step forward when even our strongest warriors refused?" The human closed the scroll and looked at him. His voice was calm, steady. "Because no one else did," he answered. "Because children should not pay the price of war. Because her daughters cry tonight, and if I can stop that cry, then I must." The scholar stared at him in silence. Then with a slow nod he handed the human a hidden star chart. "This was forbidden," the old alien whispered. "It shows secret routes to the enemy worlds. Take it. You may have a chance." The human bowed in thanks, his vow growing stronger. At dawn, the queen summoned him once more. Her face still carried sorrow. But now there was also something else: respect. She stood tall before him and said, "Human, the journey ahead is death for most. I ask you again. Do you truly vow to bring back my daughters?" The human placed the jewel on his chest. His eyes never left hers. "I vow it," he said. "Even if my blood paints the stars, even if my body is broken, I will not return without them." "This I swear," her court gasped at his words. Some mocked him again, but this time their laughter was weaker, for his voice carried weight, a weight that pierced through fear. The queen stepped down and placed her hand on his shoulder. "Then go," she said. "Go where my armies will not. Go where my fear cannot follow. May the stars guide your vow." The human left the palace as the alien sun rose. His figure small against the massive gates, but his shadow stretched long, as if the universe itself bent to his determination. The people of the city watched him pass. Some spat, some cursed, but some bowed their heads in silent hope. On the edge of the city stood a ship, old and scarred from forgotten wars. The human entered it and touched its controls. The engines roared to life. Shaking dust from its frame, he strapped himself in, placed the jewel on the console, and whispered. For them, the ship lifted into the sky, breaking through the clouds, leaving behind the palace, the queen and her tears. His vow was now bound to the stars themselves. But even as he left, the enemy had already learned of him. In the dark halls of their fortress, alien lords sneered. "A human comes for the queen's children," they laughed. "Let him. His bones will decorate our gates." Yet one among them frowned, sensing something more, sensing that this human was not like the others. As the human's ship entered the void, the stars stretched around him, endless and cold, yet his heart burned like fire. His vow was not just a promise to the queen, it was a promise to himself, to humanity, to prove that even the smallest among the stars could carry the greatest strength. He stared at the jewel once more and whispered, "I will not fail." And the stars, ancient and silent, seemed to whisper back. The journey through hostile stars. The human ship drifted into the endless sea of stars. Behind him, the alien queen's world grew smaller and smaller until it was only a pale dot of light. Before him stretched darkness scattered with distant suns, and somewhere within that darkness lay the fortress where the daughters were kept. The controls hummed softly under his hands. The engines were old, the hull bore scars of forgotten battles, but the human guided it with steady skill. He had studied the maps, he had memorized the star charts. He knew the path would be dangerous, but he had made his vow and he would not turn back. Soon the first trial came. A patrol fleet appeared on his scanners, enemy ships armed and swift. They searched the void for intruders, and if they found him, they would destroy him without hesitation. The human did not panic. Instead, he cut power to his ship. letting it drift cold and lifeless among the asteroids. The enemy patrol passed close, their lights sweeping across the rocks, but they did not see him. His heart beat fast, yet he remained calm, waiting until the danger passed. When the patrol was gone, he reignited the engines and whispered, "One step closer." His journey continued. Days passed in silence. The void was vast, filled with shadows and whispers of old wars. He passed wrecks of forgotten battleships, their hulks floating like ghosts. He wondered how many lives had been lost among these stars. But he pressed on. Each day he reminded himself of the vow, of the Queen's tears, of the children waiting in fear. One night, alarms rang in his cockpit. His ship had been detected, pirates this time, not soldiers. Alien smugglers hungry for prey. Their ships surrounded him like wolves around a lone traveler. The human knew he could not outfight them. His weapons were weak, his shields thin, so he turned to cunning. He opened a communication channel and sent out a false distress signal, pretending his engines were failing. The pirates, greedy for salvage, closed in without caution as they approached. He released a cluster of fuel cells into space and triggered them to explode. The blast blinded their sensors for a moment. In that heartbeat, the human pushed his ship through a narrow gap and escaped into the void. The pirates cursed and fired blindly, but he was gone. Exhausted but alive, he leaned back in his chair and let out a slow breath. "Not today," he whispered. His journey was far from over. As he crossed deeper into enemy space, the stars grew fewer, the darkness thicker, and strange signals filled his scanners. He knew he was close to the forbidden zone, the place where the fortress was said to hide. Each signal made his heart race. Was it a warning? Was it a trap? Or was it the cry of the lost daughters? He remembered the Queen's face, the weight of her sorrow. He remembered the jewel in his hand, glowing faintly like a guiding light. He tightened his grip on the controls. His vow was his compass. On the 7th day, he found what he had been searching for. A shadow on the edge of a dying star. A fortress carved into an asteroid, its walls black as night. Enemy banners flew from its towers, and warships patrolled its perimeter like hawks circling their prey. The human's heart pounded. Here, within those walls, the daughters were held. Here was the place no army dared to enter. He cut the engines and watched from afar, studying every movement, every pattern of the guards. He traced the routes of patrol ships, the openings in their scans, the blind spots in their defenses. His mind worked faster than his heart, calculating, planning, weaving a path that no one else would see. But even as he watched, a whisper of doubt entered his mind. He was only one man, one human against an empire. Could he really step into that fortress and return with the daughters? He closed his eyes and remembered the Queen's voice, trembling with despair. He remembered the children's faces as he imagined them, scared and alone, and then he remembered his own words. "I vow it." The doubt faded, replaced by fire. He leaned forward, his eyes locked on the fortress, and whispered, "I am coming." The stars around him burned silently, bearing witness to a journey that had only just begun. The fortress of shadows, the human ship, floated in the dark, hidden in the shadow of an asteroid. Ahead of him loomed the fortress, massive and merciless. Its walls were carved from black stone and reinforced with alien steel. Towers rose like claws against the dying star, and thousands of lights flickered along its edges. Each light was a guard, each shadow a trap. The fortress was alive with movement. Patrol ships circled like predators, scanners sweeping across the void, heavy cannons pointed outward, waiting for an intruder to dare approach. To most it looked impenetrable, a place where hope went to die. But the human studied every detail with sharp eyes. He did not see only walls, he saw cracks. He did not see only patrols, he saw patterns. He cut his ship's power and let it drift, blending with the debris of forgotten battles. Hours passed, then days. He ate little, he slept less. His eyes never left the fortress. Slowly he pieced together its rhythm, the rotation of guards, the shift of patrols, the blind spots in the scanners. He began to see not a prison but a path. When the time came, he prepared his suit. It was patched and old, but he checked each seal twice. He carried no heavy weapons, only a stolen blade and his courage. He whispered to the jewel of the Queen, "Guide me," then pushed off from his ship into the void. The journey across space to the fortress was silent, each movement careful, each breath controlled. He used fragments of metal as cover, moving only when the patrols turned their eyes away. Once, a scanner beam swept so close it lit the edge of his visor. He froze, his heart pounding like thunder. But the beam passed and he continued at last. He reached the shadow of the fortress wall. The stone stretched above him. Cold and merciless, he placed his hand against it, feeling its rough surface. This was the place where the daughters were kept, and this was the place he would break into. He found a maintenance hatch, small and rusted, hidden behind a cluster of pipes. To most, it was invisible. To him, it was a doorway. He worked quickly, prying it open with steady hands. The lock was alien, complex, but he had studied their systems piece by piece. He broke it down until the hatch creaked open. He slipped inside, the darkness swallowing him. The air was stale, filled with the hum of distant machines. Narrow tunnels stretched before him, lit only by faint red lights. He moved quietly, each step measured. His ears caught every sound, the drip of water, the buzz of wires, the distant footsteps of guards. He followed the tunnels deeper, avoiding the main halls. He ducked into shadows when patrols passed, pressing himself against the cold walls. His breath slowed, his body still. He became a shadow among shadows. Soon he reached a large chamber. Through the grates above, he saw them, the alien queen's daughters. 3 young figures locked in a cage of shimmering energy, their faces pale, their eyes wide with fear. They whispered to each other, holding hands in silence. His heart tightened. He had found them, but between him and the cage stood guards. Armed and watchful, their armor gleamed in the faint light, and their weapons pulsed with energy. The human studied them, counting their steps, measuring the gaps in their routine. He did not rush. He knew one mistake meant death. He whispered to himself, "Not yet. Wait." He crouched in the shadows, his blade tight in his hand. The fortress was alive around him, walls echoing with danger. Yet he was calm, for he had come farther than anyone believed possible. Hours turned into endless waiting at last. A chance appeared. 2 guards left their post to change shifts. Leaving a brief gap, the human slid through the tunnels. Climbing closer to the chamber, he moved with the silence of breath, the patience of stone. As he reached the final grate, his eyes met the children's. For a moment they froze. Then hope flickered in their gaze. One of them whispered a single word, almost too soft to hear, "Human." His heart burned. He placed a finger to his lips, signaling them to stay silent. The fortress seemed to breathe around him, alive with shadows and danger. Yet in that moment he knew the path was real. He was inside, he was close, and he would not turn back. For the first time since his vow, he could almost hear the queen's voice in his mind, not in despair but in hope. And he whispered back into the silence of the fortress, "I am here." The rescue. The human crouched in the shadows above the chamber. His eyes never left the cage where the queen's daughters sat, their faces pale but filled with a spark of hope after seeing him. The guards below paced slowly, their heavy boots echoing across the metal floor. Energy rifles glowed faintly in their hands. Their armor gleamed under the red lights. Sharp and unforgiving, he waited, counting their steps. Watching their routine, patience was his weapon, and silence was his shield. At last the moment came. 2 guards moved away toward the far side of the hall, leaving a thin gap in their line. The human's muscles tensed. His hand tightened around the stolen blade. He slipped down from the grate, landing as quiet as a falling shadow. He moved fast, silent, his blade striking true. The first guard fell without a sound. The second turned too late. The human's arm caught his throat. Dragging him into the darkness, the body crumpled softly against the floor. The other guards were too far to notice. The children gasped, but he raised a finger to his lips again. Urging them to stay silent, he rushed to the cage. His fingers brushed the glowing barrier. Sparks danced across his skin, the field burned with energy. It was no ordinary lock, it was alive. Humming with alien power, he studied the controls. Strange symbols glowing faintly. His hands moved carefully, pressing combinations, testing sequences. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the barrier flickered. He pressed again. Sweat dripping down his face, the cage pulsed once more. And then the energy dissolved with a sharp hiss. The daughters leapt forward, their small hands clutching his arm. Tears shone in their eyes, but he held them close, whispering, "Quiet. We must move," they nodded, their trust placed fully in him. He looked back at the hall. The other guards had noticed something was wrong. Their voices rose in alarm, footsteps thundered. The human grabbed the youngest daughter in his arms and pulled the others close. He dashed toward the tunnels, moving with speed born of desperation. Shouts echoed behind him. Energy blasts lit the walls as the guards fired. Sparks showered across the chamber. But he did not stop. His body shielded the children, his blade flashing when a soldier blocked their way. He turned corners fast, weaving through the fortress like he had memorized its veins. He had studied its rhythm, and now he used it every step, every path. Chosen with precision, still the alarm spread, sirens wailed. Red lights flashed across the walls. The fortress roared awake like a wounded beast. The daughters clung to him, their breaths fast and shallow. "Are we safe?" one whispered. "Not yet," he answered, his voice calm but firm. "Stay close, hold on." He led them deeper into the tunnels, searching for the path back to the maintenance hatch. But the fortress was closing around them. More guards rushed from every side. The human fought like a storm. His blade struck fast, his movement sharp. He did not fight for glory. He fought for survival. For the children in his care, a blast seared past his shoulder, burning his armor, but he did not falter. Another guard lunged, and the human met him with steel. His strength was not greater than theirs, but his will was unbreakable. At last he reached a narrow passage, too small for the enemy to rush in all at once. He pushed the daughters ahead of him, shielding them with his own body as they crawled through. The guards shouted behind him, firing wildly. Energy bolts struck the walls, sending sparks across his back. Still he moved forward, dragging himself through the tight space. They reached a hidden chamber, quiet and dark. For the moment, they were safe. The children collapsed beside him. Their breaths ragged, he checked each of them quickly. Relief filled him when he saw they were unhurt. "We must keep moving," he whispered. "The way out is close." The eldest daughter, her voice trembling, asked, "Why? Why are you helping us, human? None of our people came." "Why you?" The human looked at her, his face calm but firm. "Because no one else did," he answered softly. "Because I gave my word to your mother, and I will not break it." Tears filled her eyes. She reached for his hand, gripping it tightly. The younger ones clung to his arms. Their trust was complete now. For the first time since their capture, they believed they would see their mother again. The human took a deep breath. His body ached, his armor scorched, but his spirit was stronger than ever. He had come into the heart of the enemy's fortress and found them. Now came the hardest part, getting out. He looked at the small vent above, leading toward the surface. It was narrow, dangerous, but it was their path. He lifted the children one by one, helping them climb. His blade ready in his hand, his eyes sharp. Every shadow could hide danger. Every sound could bring death. Yet he moved with steady resolve. Behind him, the alarms still roared. The fortress would not rest until they were caught. But he whispered into the dark, "You will not take them again." And with the children at his side, he began the escape. The chase across the stars. The human's hands flew across the ship's controls. The engines roared awake, trembling as if they too feared the wrath of the enemy. The queen's daughter sat behind him, their wide eyes fixed on the stars outside. Their breaths came fast, their hands clutching the seats. They had escaped the fortress, but they were not safe yet. Alarms blared across enemy space. Warships launched from the black fortress like arrows fired into the void. Their engines lit the darkness with fire, their weapons charged, ready to strike. The human tightened his grip on the controls. He whispered to himself, "Hold steady," and pushed the ship into full speed. The first blast came quickly. Beams of energy streaked past. Shaking the hull, the daughters cried out. But the human's voice was steady. "Do not fear, trust me." He twisted the ship, diving into a nearby asteroid field. Rocks spun around them, sharp and massive. The enemy ships followed, their fire cutting through the void. The human moved with calm precision, weaving the ship through gaps no one else would dare attempt. Asteroids scraped the hull, sparks flying. But the human did not slow. Behind him, enemy ships crashed against stone, explosions tearing apart the field. Yet more came, relentless and furious. The chase stretched across the stars. The human's eyes scanned every light, every shadow. He used the gravity wells of dead planets to slingshot his ship forward. He cut power suddenly, letting enemy scanners lose his signal, then reignited the engines to burst through another path. Each move bought him time, but the enemy was many, and he was only one. Inside the cabin, the daughters clung to each other. Watching him with awe, the eldest whispered, "Mother trusted him for a reason." The youngest cried softly. But when the human placed a hand on her shoulder, she grew calm. His presence was like iron, unshaken even as death chased them. Hours passed, and the pursuit did not end. The enemy flagship appeared on the edge of the scanners. Larger and stronger than the rest, its weapons glowed like a burning star. Its voice crackled across the comms. "Human, surrender the children." "You cannot escape." The daughters trembled, but the human only smiled faintly. "We will see," he murmured. The flagship opened fire, beams of energy slicing the void. The human spun the ship, rolling between the blasts. The hull shuddered, alarm screamed. But still they flew. He darted into the tail of a comet. Its ice spraying across the stars, enemy ships followed, but their sensors faltered in the blinding light. The human twisted free, leaving them stumbling in confusion. Yet the flagship remained, hunting him without mercy. It closed the distance slowly, its shadow covering his small vessel. The daughters gasped. "We cannot outrun them," one whispered. The human's eyes narrowed, his voice calm. "Then we will outthink them." He studied the scanners, saw the pull of a nearby gas giant with deadly rings of ice and rock. To most it was a death trap, but to him it was a shield. He turned the ship toward it. Engines roared as they plunged into the rings. Ice shards larger than mountains spun around them, colliding with thunderous force. The flagship followed, its size working against it. The human guided the ship through narrow gaps, using the ice to block the enemy's weapons. Explosions lit the rings as the flagship's blast struck the rocks instead of him. Still it pursued, its voice thundered again. "Surrender." The human's lips pressed into a thin smile. His vow burned inside him, stronger than any fear. He cut the engine suddenly, drifting among the spinning ice. The flagship swept past, its sensors searching. Its weapons aimed at empty space in that heartbeat. The human reignited the engines and shot out from the rings, leaving the massive warship behind. The daughters cheered, their voices filled with relief. Tears streamed down their faces. For the first time, hope shone bright. The eldest whispered, "You are more than one man. You are a storm." The human did not answer, he only looked ahead, the jewel of the queen glowing faintly on his console, guiding him home. But even as they escaped the gas giant, new blips appeared on the scanner. More ships were coming. An entire fleet now roused against them. The human's jaw tightened. He whispered to himself, "One more step, hold the vow." His eyes burned with fire. He would not stop, he would not turn back. Behind him, the enemy gathered like a storm. Ahead of him stretched the long road to the Queen's world. Between them was only courage, cunning, and the fire of his promise. The chase was not over, it had only begun. The return and revelation. The human's ship tore through the void, the engines burning brighter than ever. Behind him, the enemy fleet stretched like a wall of fire. Their weapons lit the darkness. Their war cries shook the comms. But ahead lay the Queen's world, shining like a beacon of hope. If he could reach it, the daughters would be safe. The children sat close together, their faces pale, yet their eyes glowed with faith. They no longer trembled as before, they trusted him now, their human guardian who had defied the impossible. The eldest whispered, "He will not let us fall." The younger ones nodded, clinging to each other. The scanners blared again. The flagship was closing. Its cannons glowed like suns ready to consume him. The human's hands tightened on the controls. His body ached from the long fight, but his will did not waver, he whispered. "One last storm," and pushed the engines to their limit. Enemy fire rained down, the ship shook, panels cracked. Smoke filled the cabin. The daughters coughed. But he shielded them with his arms. Guiding the vessel with sheer resolve, he spun through meteor trails, skimmed close to dying stars, used every shadow, every piece of debris as cover. Still, the enemy pressed closer. As the Queen's world grew near, the fleet formed a trap. Dozens of warships blocked the path, their weapons charged, their commanders eager to crush him. The daughters gasped. "We cannot pass." The human's eyes burned. His voice steady. "We will watch." He cut the engine suddenly. Letting the ship drift, the enemy closed in, confident in their victory. Then, with perfect timing, he reignited the thrusters, diving low toward the planet's rings. He used gravity itself to slingshot the ship forward, faster than the enemy could track. Blinding light streaked behind him. The fleet broke formation, chaos spreading. The flagship roared commands, but it was too late. The human had slipped through. The Queen's palace loomed on the horizon. Her fleets rose to meet him. At first they prepared to fire, thinking he was an enemy craft. But then they saw the jewel shining on his console. They saw the royal insignia glowing like fire, and they halted. Shock spread across their ranks as they realized the impossible had happened. The human landed in the great courtyard. The ship's hull scorched, smoke trailing from its wounds. The hatch opened slowly, and out stepped the human. Weary yet unbroken, behind him the daughters emerged, their small hands clutching his arms. Tears streamed down their faces, but they were tears of joy. The queen stood at the palace steps, her eyes wide, her hands trembling. For a heartbeat she could not move. Then she ran forward, her cloak flowing behind her. She fell to her knees and gathered her daughters into her arms. Her cry echoed across the courtyard, no longer a cry of despair but of relief, of triumph. The courtiers and soldiers gasped. Some bowed, some wept, for they had doubted, they had mocked. But the human had returned. The daughters clung to their mother, whispering through tears, "He saved us, he never gave up." The queen looked up at the human, her eyes filled with gratitude. "You gave me back my heart," she whispered. The human bowed his head, his voice calm. "I gave only what I vowed." The queen rose. Her daughters still in her arms, she turned to her court and shouted, "Behold this human, where armies failed, he triumphed. Where fear ruled, he defied. Remember this day. For it is the day courage came not from numbers, but from one heart." The court was silent. Awed beyond words, no one mocked now, no one doubted. They saw not a fragile human, but a force that no chain of fear could break. The queen stepped closer. "What reward do you seek?" she asked. "Gold, power, command of fleets?" The human shook his head, his answer simple. "None, only peace. Only that your people and mine may walk the stars without fear." Her eyes widened, for she had expected greed, yet he asked only for peace. She bowed her head before him, the queen of an empire bowing to a single human. The courtiers gasped again, but none spoke, for they understood. That night the stars above the palace burned bright. The daughters slept safely in their chambers. The queen wept in silent gratitude, and the human stood alone at the balcony. Staring into the endless void, he knew the enemy would remember his name. He knew war might still come, but he also knew something greater. That even among countless stars, even against impossible odds, the vow of one human could change everything. And so the story of the queen's despair became the story of her triumph. Not because of fleets, not because of armies, but because of the courage of one.